Hello everyone, welcome back to the True Crime Friday podcast with Lauren and Matt. Before we get into this episode, we're going to do a disclaimer. This podcast is completely ad-free. We make no money off this podcast and we never will. We do not have sponsors on this podcast, but this is not something that we're comfortable with. We want to just give out information that we have gathered out of an interest that we have mutually. That is all this is. We have an interest mutually on these type of subjects, and we like to gather the information for educational purposes and nothing else. We do not condone anything that we talk about within this podcast, and we do add a comedic effect to each of the episodes, but that's more to lighten the mood, and all comedic aspects are aimed at the criminal and not the victims of the crimes. We never mean to offend anyone with this podcast or make anyone uncomfortable. So before you go into this episode, please be aware that we will be talking about some graphic content. So please make yourself wary about which episode you may be listening to. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to a new week. Hope you've all been good. Hope that the weather hasn't killed you off, the heat wave that we've got in the UK. And for anyone who's international, yes, this is a heat wave for us.
And it's hot.
It's humid as fuck.
I'm fucking sweating my titties off.
It's humid as hell, and that's the issue. I don't do good in the humidity, to say the very least.
I sweat out holes I didn't even know I could sweat out of.
So today's episode, we're going to do a bit of it's kind of like a bit of a history one. I say history because it is
Isn't everything before the present day history?
Technically, yes, but this one is pre the 20th century, so that's why I say
I mean, every case we'd cover would be history. I'm saying that as if we'd ever cover a case that's happening the moment as we're recording it. That would never happen. Yeah, so yes, everything's history. That's stupid to say. This
one is from the 1800s, the late 1800s to be a bit more specific. And this one is kind of different to ones that we've covered before, only because this time we're going to be talking about a family of serial killers. Like, a family that works together kind of thing. And this family kind of, not in the same way, but whenever I've looked up this family, my brain immediately goes to the family from Resident Evil 7. Instantly.
See, the further back you go,
yeah,
technically there was loads of people's families who were serial killers, but at the time it wasn't.
No, this one...
You wouldn't have called people serial killers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this one, it's not even like they did a bit of poisoning shit. No, these guys were fucked.
Poison, that's like an OG way of killing off
it's
someone.
Such an
old-timey... in the news recently as well.
Yeah, it's such an old-timey method. But today we're going to be talking about the Bloody Benders, as they are called. So... yeah, they are called...
It's not what I think it is, right?
Huh?
It's not what I think it is, because I bet, a bender... Well, as soon as you said that, I was like,
it's
I'm
not,
sure loads of people have been on a bloody bender.
It's
not me.
It's not that. No, they were nicknamed by the media the Bloody Benders. They are the Bender family, and they were a family of serial killers in Kansas, in the US. The family consisted of John Bender, his wife Kate Sr., their son John Jr., and their daughter Kate.
Sorry, the first time when I googled that was Bloody Bender's Band, and there's a horror punk band based on that, and there was like an anime thing as well, but I found the right thing now.
Yeah,
see, even as older cases, when I judging how they look, I'm having to go off sketches. Where this far back, I'm having to go off sketches to judge the appearance.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go on sketches, because when you Google this family, they're all drawn images, and there is a reason for that, which I will go into. So yeah, this episode today is about the Bloody Benders. So we're going to start off with John Bender Sr. He was around 60 years old around the time that we're focusing on. He spoke very little English. The English he did speak was guttural and usually unintelligible. You knew he was speaking English, but you couldn't actually understand a single word he was saying.
Is that not being an American? Hey.
No, it's just, I feel like this is just someone who's a bit, just not took the time to learn English too well.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie, I remember seeing a documentary about this sort of thing. But people actually don't realise that there's still people in this day and age that can't even read or write.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be, there's people who are illiterate. But when you did say, and I know I'm not meaning to poke fun, but when you said American, he didn't speak that much English. My first mind did come to someone who can't speak that well of English, maybe due to some family goings on, if you know what I mean. That's so because I saw a video of that family from somewhere in America where the old guy only yaps and barks because of,
It's not due to inbreeding. I want to elaborate. They weren't from America originally. They were originally from Germany and they went over to live in America. So that's the reason why he spoke little English, and where they were living was kind of on like a ranch, kind of like on a barn setting, so they weren't in a major town, properly, so they didn't really congregate much. So Elvira Bender was 55 years old. She allegedly spoke little English as well and was very unfriendly, and her neighbours called her the she-devil. John Bender Jr. was around 25 years old at this point in time, and he was very handsome apparently. He had auburn hair and a mustache. He spoke English fluently, but he spoke English with a German accent, but his English was completely fine.
Oh, yes.
He was prone to laughing aimlessly, which led many to consider him a half-wit because he just laughed quite a fair bit, and apparently that was a bad thing. Kate Bender, who was around 23 years old, was cultivated and attractive and spoke English quite well with a little bit of an accent, same as her brother. So Kate Bender was a self-proclaimed healer and psychic. She distributed flyers advertising her supernatural powers and her ability to cure illnesses. She also conducted seances and gave lectures on spiritualism, for which she gained notoriety for advocating free love. Kate's popularity became a large attraction for the Benders Inn, which was their bed and breakfast that they had. Although the elder Benders kept to themselves, Kate and her brother frequently attended Sunday school in nearby Harmony Grove. The Benders were widely believed to be German immigrants. No documentation or definitive proof of their relationships to one another or where they were born has ever really been found, because we are talking over 100 years ago here. John Bender Sr. was from either Germany, Norway or the Netherlands, and was claimed to be named as John Flickinger, although it has been proven that he was in fact not John Bender. They were just called the Bender family when they went over. It's like, some people change their names to make it easier for whatever countries they've moved into. Kind of like that vibe.
Oh, because I had this, the first person I ever worked with, she was Polish, her name was Dana, but that's her, English variation of the name. Yeah. I'm assuming they did the same. I never asked. There's a lot of people, I just assumed that's their name, but then, I guess, obviously, for us, if we lived abroad, we have the luxury of not having to change our name to fit in, or we could, I guess, there may be some French variation. There's a French variation of my name, I know what I mean, but obviously when people come over here, I feel it's a bit ignorant though sometimes how they change their name because they kind of know that people over here just would absolutely just butcher their name normally, or just would have no way in saying that.
So the Benders their background is the information is very limited, and that's mostly just due to a lot of time being passed. Obviously, they've moved countries, so there's not going to be as much documentation about them. So according to contemporary newspapers, Elvira was born Almira Hill Mark in the Adirondack Mountains. She married a man called Simon Mark, and she had possibly 12 children with him. She later married another man called William Stephen Griffith. She was rumoured to have murdered several husbands, but none of these rumours have ever been proven, and Kate was apparently her 5th daughter. Some of the Benders' neighbours claimed that John Jr. and Kate were not actually brother and sister, but they were actually husband and wife, so whether they were related or not, no one actually fully knows. According to author Lee Ralph, the Benders' origins could be traced to Germany and France, eventually arriving in America, and in around 1870. And around this point in time, John Sr. would have been age 53. His wife would have been age 49. John, age 24. And Kate around the age of, I think she was in her late teens. There's the information on their early start is very much limited, to say the very least.
I mean, I'm not surprised, because around that time, I doubt that, especially as we just talked about Someone Land in the last episode about how it is on flying planes now. Due to that, more than likely they didn't have to bring half their documentation maybe at the time to get into the United States, so they just left it all behind and didn't really give a shit if it got burned and destroyed. Because I just had that thought as well, that obviously a lot of serial killers and stuff, and as I just talked about at the start, where people were technically serial killers back in the day, what we realistically know about them is going to be diddly squat, thanks to there not being that much developments in human society and life, that we have the technologies to be able to preserve stuff better. So exactly. All that's just gone. And the only people who did know about it, they're dead, unless for some reason they told other people about the serial killers that they knew and witnessed. But now that you're actually saying it, I remember this website. I've gone on it now. It's Forebearers. It's a website where you can put in your last name, and you can see the distribution of the last name around the world and where it's like most common. And I just did it now, and apparently highest density is in the Norfolk Island, but most prevalent in the United States. Whether or not that's because they came over, but looking at the map, the massive red parts are on Germany and the US. Not so many people in the UK though. I feel like if you had the last name Bender in the UK, you know what's happening. Your name's getting taken the piss out of. Especially nowadays,
1000%. To be fair, I actually did. I did have a PE teacher that was called Mrs. Bender. To be honest.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. She was very nice.
Yeah. Most prevalent in France. I just did your last name. Apparently you're most prevalent in France. You must be French.
I already know that.
Did you?
I already knew
your last name was French.
I already
did that now.
I figured that out a long time ago. I think it was because my ex-boyfriend's family's Scottish, and because of how pale I can be, his dad looked at me and just went, your family's either, like, your family history is either Scottish or it's French, because no way are you that pale and burn that easy? And then I asked my mum and she went, please say your name please say your last name properly. And I just, so we should say it slowly, and I went, oh yeah, okay, no, I hear it now. You say it out loud in a French accent, you can tell.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with mine. I remember the first time I went on this site and I'm like, I always Google to see if my name comes up anywhere else, and it just said, yeah, most prevalent in Scotland, highest density in Scotland. I was like, yeah, I don't know why I even Googled that. It's fucking pointless. I mean, there's a few other places, but the massive red spot's on there, and I was like, why did I even do that? I know my name's Scottish. I was just looking for a surprise. Like when people do ancestor DNA kits, to look for surprise so they can go, oh my god, I am 0.1% Algerian.
Yes,
but I'm like, if I do that DNA test, it's all going to be mostly Scottish. I'm not going to get no surprise.
Anyone who does those DNA tests just becomes insufferably annoying.
I will say though, when people start claiming stuff when they're 1 point something, that's a tiny minute.
Like, oh, you know what I mean? I'm 1/3 Spanish, right? Fuck off.
I mean, your last name is French, but I doubt you go about going, well, actually, I'm a French, so Because you seem a little bit of a... Especially when you go to the country and then go, actually, that's when it's like, whoa.
No, yeah, I'm not one of those people, like, at all. No. So from those who knew them, have written about the family, because obviously when the crimes came out and everything had started kicking off, everyone jumps on the bandwagon, and clearly this is a tale as old as time where everyone jumps on the bandwagon and needs to say what they think they know about the person who's been committing said crimes. It's never changed. So someone said that the old man was repulsive, hideous brute without a redeeming trait, dirty, profane, and ill-tempered. Another one said, old Mrs. Bender was a dirty old Dutch crone. Her face was a fit picture of the midnight hag that wove the spell murderous ambition about the soul of Macbeth. Fucking hell. That is a statement and a half.
I'm laughing because of what that is considered basically insulting someone nowadays is just like not even an insult. I mean, someone can take it as an insult, but like how far we've come in really insulting someone if you didn't like them.
If anyone just, you're a prick, I don't like you.
Imagine that's just, you hag.
I'd be like, whatever. But if someone just went, dirty old Dutch crone, her face was a fit picture of the midnight hag that wove the spell murderous ambition about the soul of Macbeth, I'd be like, fucking hell, you said that with chest. So,
yeah, I mean, like you just said, that's a lot. You know, in this day, it's just like, you're a fucking cunt. There you go.
Someone else...
you see the fucking whole spiel of the Bible, just straight up, you're a fucking cunt, there you go, and done. In the bad way.
Someone else said, young Bender, seen when excited, recalled the grave-robbing hyena at once to mind. Kate proclaimed herself responsible to no one save herself. She professed to be a medium of spiritualism and delivered lectures on that subject. In her lectures, she publicly declared that murder might be a dictation for good, and that in what the world might deem villainy, her soul might read bravery, nobility, and humanity. She advocated free love and denounced all social regulations for the promotion of purity and the prevention of carnality, which she called miserable requirements of self-constituted society. She maintained carnal relations with her brother and boldly proclaimed her right to do so in the following words found in her lecture manuscript. Shall we confine ourselves to a single love or deny our natures their proper sway? Even though it is my brother's passion for his own sister, I say it should not be smothered. You know what? They actually might be an inbred family, to be honest. Actually, no, yeah, I'm pretty sure they are an inbred family. After reading that last bit, I was like,
it's America, but America's the place where family members, they got the family members.
Other countries have that issue too. Norwich exists.
Hey, I've been to England only a few times, and I hate having to cross the border into England. I'm sorry, but if you know the inbreeding places better than I do, so
I mean, I've only heard the jokes about Norwich, to be honest. So,
well, I thought it was a nice place.
So, we're now in May of 1871. In this period of time, this is when the body of a man named Jones was discovered in Drum Creek. He was found with a cut throat and a crushed skull. The owner of the Drum Creek claim was suspected, but no action was taken. In February of 1872, the bodies of two men were found with the same injuries. By 1873, reports of missing people who had passed through the area had become so common that travellers began to avoid that said trail. The area was widely known for horse thieves and villains, and vigilante committees often arrested some of the disappearances, only for them to be later released. Many innocent men under suspicion were also run out of the country by these said committees. In the winter of 1872, George Newton Longcore left Independence, Kansas, with his infant daughter Mary Ann to resettle in Iowa, and they were never seen again. In the spring of 1873, George's former neighbour, Dr. William Henry York, went looking for them and questioned homesteaders along the trail. York reached Fort Scott, and on the 9th of March began the return journey to Independence, but he had never arrived at his destination. York had two brothers, Ed York, who lived in Fort Scott, and Colonel Alexander M. York, a Civil War veteran, lawyer, and member of the Kansas State Senate from Independence. Both knew of Williams's travels, and when he didn't turn up, they began a search for their brother. Colonel York, leading a search of 50 men, questioned every traveller along the trail and visited all the homes in the area. On the 28th of March, 1873, Colonel York arrived at the Benders Inn with a Mr. Johnson, explaining that his brother had gone missing and asking if they had seen him. They admitted Dr. York had stayed with them and suggested the possibility that he had run into trouble with Indians/Native Americans. Colonel York agreed that this was possible and remained for dinner. On the 3rd of April, Colonel York returned to the inn with armed men after learning that a woman had fled the inn after Elvira Bender had threatened her with knives. Elvira allegedly could not understand English, while the younger Benders denied the claim. When York repeated the claim, Elvira became enraged, saying the woman was a witch who had cursed her coffee and ordered the men to leave her house, revealing for the first time that her sense of the English language was much better than what was let on. Before York left, Kate asked him to return alone the following Friday night, and she would use her clairvoyant abilities to help him find his brother. The men with York were convinced that the Benders and the neighbouring family, the Roaches, were guilty and wanted to hang them all, but York insisted that evidence must be found before they take further action. Around that time, neighbouring committees began to make accusations that the Osage community was responsible for the disappearances, and the Osage Township arranged a meeting in the Harmony Grove schoolhouse. 75 locals attended the meeting, including Colonel York and possibly both John Bender and John Bender Jr. After discussing the disappearances, including that of William York, they agreed to obtain a warrant to search every homestead between Big Hill Creek and Drum Creek. Despite York's strong suspicions regarding the Benders since his visit several weeks earlier, no one had watched them, and it was not noticed for several days that they had fled. 3 days after the town's meeting, Billy Toll was driving cattle past the Bender property when he noticed that the inn was abandoned and the farm animals were unfed. Billy reported the fact to the township trustee, but due to inclement weather, several days lapsed before the abandonment could be investigated. The township trustee called for volunteers, and several hundred turned out to form a search party that included Colonel York. When they arrived at the inn, they found the cabin empty of food, clothing, and all possessions. A bad odour was noticed and traced to a trap underneath a bed that was nailed shut. After opening the trap, the party found clotted blood on the floor of the empty room underneath. The room was 6 foot deep and 7 feet square at the top by 3 feet square at the bottom. They broke up the stone slab floor with sledgehammers, but they found no bodies, and determined that the smell was from blood that had soaked in the soil. The men then physically lifted the cabin and moved it to the side to dig under it, but no bodies were found. They then probed the ground around the cabin with a metal rod, especially in the disturbed soil of the vegetable garden and orchard, where Dr. York's body was found later that evening, buried face down, with his feet barely below the surface. The probing continued until midnight, with another 9 suspected grave sites marked before the men were satisfied they had found them all and retired for the night. The next morning, another 8 bodies were found in 7 of the 9 suspected graves, while 1 was found in the well, along with several body parts. All but 1 had their heads bashed with a hammer and throats cut, and newspapers reported that all of them had been indecently mutilated. The body of a young girl was found with no injuries sufficient to cause of death. It was speculated that she had been strangled or buried alive. A Kansas newspaper reported that the crowd was so invested after finding the bodies that a friend of the Benders named Brockman, who was among the onlookers, was hanged from a beam in the inn until unconscious. revived, integrated, and then hanged again. After the third hanging, they released him and he staggered home as one who was drunken or deranged. A Roman Catholic prayer book was found in the house of notes written in German, which translated to John Anna Bender, born the 30th of July, 1848. John Gebhardt came to America on the 1st of July, 18... ? They don't actually know what that ended up saying. And Big Slaughter Day, Jan 8th, and Hell Departed. Word of the murders spread quickly, and more than 3,000 people, including reporters from as far away as New York City and Chicago, visited the site. Bear in mind that is a trip and a half, because this is the 1800s. This is not, let's get on a plane, get there as quickly as possible. That would have taken days to get there. The Bender cabin was destroyed by souvenir hunters who took everything, including the bricks that lined the cellar and the stones lining the well. State Senator Alexander York offered a $1,000 reward for the family's arrest. On the 17th of May, Kansas Governor Tom A. Osborne offered a $2,000 reward for the apprehension of all four in the Bender family. Now, obviously, I've just mentioned the trapdoor, where they found all the clotted blood and all that kind of stuff, which is what rose their suspicion and which is what made them dig up underneath the house. So now it's time to talk about their killing method. And it's very horror movie-esque in a way. It's not your usual method of killing that we've ever listed before, I will say that. So it is suggested that all the victims had stayed in the Bender's inn. So they'd stayed in the bed and breakfast. And the Bender family would give the guest a seat of honour at the table that was positioned over a trapdoor that led into the cellar. So they'd invite them to dinner, out of common courtesy, because they're hosting a bed and breakfast, and they would be like, here is the guest seat, please sit there. We want you to be as comfortable as possible. With the victim's back to the curtain, Kate would distract the guest while John Bender or his son came from behind the curtain and struck the guest on the right side of the skull with a hammer. One of the women would cut the victim's throat to ensure that they had died, and the body was then dropped through the trap door. Once they were in the cellar, the body would be stripped and later buried somewhere on the property, often in the orchard. Although some of the victims were wealthy, others carried little of value, and it was suggested that the Benders had killed them simply just for the sheer thrill, since there was no financial benefit to the situation. I think like the only financial benefit out of it all would be the money that they used to pay for staying at the bed and breakfast. But that wouldn't be much, which is the reason why people stayed there. So this would have been just for the sheer thrill of the kill. Testimony from people who had stayed at the Benders Inn and managed to escape, because yes, people did actually escape their bed and breakfast, shockingly enough. So we do actually have testimony from survivors of the bloody Benders. So these people managed to escape before they could be killed, and they appeared to support the presumed execution method of the Benders. So William Pickering said that he had refused to sit near the wagon cloth because there was a lot of stains on it, and he was like, I'm meant to be the guest of honour and sitting in that seat, but there's a lot of stains on it that I don't know, and I'm not really comfortable eating next to that. And when he said that he doesn't want to sit there, Kate Bender then decided to threaten him with a knife, which then scared the living shit out of him, so he legged it. As you would. Their next guest was a Catholic priest called Father Paul Ponzigilone. He claimed to have seen one of the Bender men concealing a large hammer, at which point he became uncomfortable and he quickly left the inn, making the excuse that he needed to tend to his horse. However, Father Paul only claimed to have had an encounter after the Benders' crimes were revealed, making his account unreliable. The Bender family sold stolen goods such as horses, saddles, clothes and other possessions under the guise that people who spent the night were unable to pay would pay with said goods. So no one really questioned it, because they were just like, oh, this is either stuff they left behind or they couldn't pay their fee, so they exchanged for this stuff instead. At another time, a woman named Mrs. Fitz, while sitting at dinner, became uneasy and sensed a muffled movement behind the curtain that was, behind her. Kate issues a command, but before anything could happen, the terrified Mrs. Fitz had already ran out of the inn. Two men who had travelled to the inn to experience Kate Bender's psychic powers stayed for dinner but refused to sit at the table next to the cloth, instead preferring to eat their meal at the main shop counter. Kate clearly has issues, obviously. Kate then became very abusive towards the men, and shortly afterwards the Bender men emerged from behind the cloth. At this point the customers felt uneasy and decided to leave, a move that pretty much saved their lives. More than a dozen bullet holes were found in the roof and the sides of the cabin. The media speculated that some of the children had attempted to fight back after being hit with the hammer. Detectives following wagon tracks discovered the Bender's wagon abandoned with a starving team of horses just outside the city limits of Thayer. It was confirmed that the family had bought tickets on the Leavenworth, Lawrence and Galveston Railroad for Humboldt. At Chanute, John Jr. and Kate left the train and caught the MK&T train south to the terminus in Red River County near Denison, Texas. From there they travelled to an outlaw colony thought to be in the border region between Texas and New Mexico. They were not pursued, as lawmen following outlaws into this region often never returned. One detective later claimed that he had traced the pair to the border, where he had found that John Jr. had died of apoplexy. There you go. The elder Benders did not leave the train like Kate and John Jr. did, but instead continued to North Kansas City, where it is believed they purchased tickets for St. Louis, Missouri. Several groups of vigilantes were formed to search for the Bender family, and many stories say that one vigilante group caught the Benders and shot them all but Kate, who was burned alive. Another group claimed they caught the Benders and lynched them before throwing their bodies into a river. Yet another claimed to have killed the Benders during a gunfight and buried their bodies on the prairie. No one ever claimed
responsible for the murders or the killings of these notorious serial killers at the time.
Yeah, people just trying to. I think people. I don't understand that, but yeah, from what it looks like.
Off fame. I mean, people have done that. People who've killed notorious serial killers in prison or whatnot have got fame off that. But I don't know why you'd want to do that. Even in that time, I don't know why you'd want to say I'm the one who killed these people for fame and whatnot. Because what do you really in that time? What do you realistically get off that? Are they gonna go? Oh, there you go. Here you go. You can have a knighthood for that. Or oh well, you're gonna get a nice new house. Thanks. Or you don't really get anything.
Well, they were going to be getting $1,000 to $2,000, which at that point in time is a lot of money. So basically, they become fairly wealthy. But no,
they just wanted them dead. They didn't want them in and captured. They just wanted them dead.
Pretty much.
Fair enough.
So, despite all these claims about having killed the Bender family, no one actually ever claimed the reward. The story of the Bender's escape spread, and the search continued on and off for the next 50 years. Often, two women travelling together were accused of being Kate Bender and her mother. In 1884, it was reported that a John Flickinger had committed suicide in Lake Michigan. Also in 1884, an elderly man matching John Bender Sr.'s description was arrested in Montana for a murder committed near Salmon, Idaho, where the victim had been killed by a hammer blow to the head. A message requesting positive identification was sent to Claire to Cherryvale, but the suspect severed his foot to escape his leg irons and bled to death. By the time a deputy from Cherryvale arrived, identification was impossible due to decomposition. Despite the lack of identification, the man's skull was displayed as that of Pa Bender in Salmon Saloon until Prohibition forced its closure in 1920, and the skull just disappeared. Whether John Flickinger was John Bender is actually unknown to this very day. Several weeks after the discovery of the bodies, Addison Roach and his son-in-law William Buxton were arrested as accessories. In total, 12 men of bad repute in general were arrested, including Brockman. All had been involved in disposing of the victim's stolen goods, with Mick Cherry, a member of the Vigilante Committee, implicated for forging a letter from one of the victims informing the man's wife that he had arrived safely at his destination. So, fake letters. Brockman would be arrested again 23 years later for the rape and murder of his own 18-year-old daughter. So, Brockman's a cunt. On the 31st of October 1889, it was reported that Mrs. Almira Monroe and Mrs. Sarah Alyssa Davis had been arrested in Niles, Michigan, several weeks earlier for larceny. They were released after being found not guilty, but were then immediately rearrested for the Bender murders. According to Pittsburgh Dispatch, the mother of one of the Bender's victims, Mrs. Frances E. McCann, had reported the pair to authorities in early October after tracking them down. Mrs. McCann's story came from dreams about her father's murder, which she discussed with Sarah Alyssa. The women's identities were later confirmed by two Osage Township witnesses from the tintype photograph. In mid-October, Deputy Sheriff Leroy Dick, the Osage Township trustee who had headed the search for the Bender family, arrived in Michigan and arrested the couple on the 30th of October following their release on the larceny charges. Mrs. Monroe resisted, declaring that she would not be taken alive, but was subdued by local deputies. So, literally, for years, this family's been hunted. And whereabouts, all this kind of stuff, is just complete, like, especially with a lot, with like, John Bender. People don't know where he is. They've all just kind of done a Scooby-Doo and separated.
Well, we've learned that how hard it can be when someone does a disappearance act to be able to find them again. You'd think that people can't hide away for so long or go into the shadows under the radar, but you can, so...
So Mrs. Davis claimed that Mrs. Monroe was Elvira Bender, but that she was not Kate, but actually her sister Sarah. While Monroe continued to deny the identification and in turn accused Sarah Alyssa of being the real Kate Bender, Deputy Sheriff Dick, unfortunate name, along with Mrs. McCann, escorted the pair to Oswego, Kansas, where 7 members of a 13-member panel confirmed the identification and committed them for trial. Another of Mrs. Monroe's daughters, Mary Gardee, later provided evidence claiming that her mother, then called Almira Shearer under the name of Almira Marks, was serving 2 years in the Detroit House of Corrections in 1872 for the manslaughter of her daughter-in-law, Emily Mark. Records of the incarceration back this up. At her hearing, Mrs. Monroe denied any knowledge of Shearer or the manslaughter charge and remained incarcerated with her daughter. Originally scheduled for February of 1890, the trial was held over to May. Mrs. Monroe now admitted that she had married a Mr. Shearer in 1872 and claimed she had previously denied it, and that she did not want the court to know that her name was Shearer at that time and that she had a conviction for manslaughter. Their attorney also produced a marriage certificate indicting that Mrs. Davis had been married in Michigan in 1872, the time when several of the murders were committed. Eyewitnesses' testimony was given that Mrs. Monroe was Elvira Bender. Judge Calvin dismissed Mary Gardee's evidence, and she was a chip off the old block. He found that other bits of evidence supporting Garda's were sufficient proof that the women could never be convicted, and he discharged them both. The evidence and other papers were missing from the file in Labette County, so further examination is impossible. Several researchers questioned the ready acceptance of the evidence's authenticity and suggested that the county was unwilling to accept the expense of boarding the two women for an extended period. While the two women were certainly criminals and liars, as their defense attorney admitted, the charges were weak and many people doubted their identification as the Benders. The older woman reportedly spoke with no accent, whereas Ma Bender, remember, had a German accent. Well, she had a European accent from roughly around that area, and she couldn't speak English properly. So these two women are being held on trial for possibly being a part of the Bender family and committing these horrendous murders. Where matter of fact is, they literally possibly are not. So it was just a complete waste of time, while the actual Benders were out doing whatever. So, at this point in history, the bloody Benders were never found. They were never convicted. They were never executed. And we will never know what happened to them. Like, at all. We will never...
That's the annoying thing. Everything that happened in the past... if it hasn't been documented.
Yeah, well, it's not even the fact that it's not been documented, it's just the fact it's not. Yeah, because it's not the fact that it's not been documented. They just escaped. They legged it, and no one found them.
Stuff that happened that wasn't documented, and the other stuff like this, you just don't know what's going on, and then. The realistically only way is if teleportation gets invented and then you could teleport back, but then you'd mess up the whole time-space continuum thing. But, yeah, I mean, they'll know what happened. Maybe they won't, but here's the thing. In a lot of true crime cases, some people do know stuff, they just don't say what they know, and they hide and keep the vital part of information for some reason, because they think that telling someone will make it worse, but it won't.
Yeah, so the reward that was offered... to people, to whoever could find them, would in 2025, it was at the time was $2,000. In 2025, that reward would have been $52,494.
Wow! So I don't know nobody claimed it though.
No one.
That's a lot of money.
No one claimed the reward because no one got them. It was whoever could. The reward was for the apprehension of all four of the bloody Benders. So even if you would have got one of them, you probably would have gotten a smidge of the reward, but they wanted all of them. Because it wasn't like they were a family that had the mum and dad committing the murders and the kids were just in the house. It's not one of those. All of them were taking part in this. Like, every single one of them were taking part in this entire situation. There is actually a list of over 20 victims, potentially, of theirs. A lot of them are unknown. A lot of them are just based on where they were coming from to where they were going. And that was kind of it. They didn't keep trophies like most serial killers do. They didn't keep any trophies because like how I said earlier, whenever they would kill someone and they would bury them, they would sell their possessions. So they wouldn't keep anything to be like, to remember the kill. They would sell the possessions instantly to get it away from them, for one, and also so they can get a bit of money.
And probably because they might have had the mindset of, this will end up in a museum at some point.
I mean, yeah, there is also that. But then again, we did have it where they put what they thought was John Bender Sr.'s skull in a museum for at least 40 years before that museum got shut down and the skull just disappeared. And I do wonder, what did they do with that skull?
See, if stuff from a museum, of all places, disappears... that raises massive big speculation, because I'm sure it was something. It was definitely a Wang video or something where it was a part of something. Some Italian person that was reportedly in the US as like a body part, or someone along the lines of that, and it's someone owns it, someone didn't. But it's along the same lines of, like, do you think that's when it closed down, someone went, I'll take that because I'll flaunting money off of it, or did it just get lost? It's a museum, the items are valuable.
This was in 1920, so God knows. So one thing I'm looking in pop culture with the Bender family, and there is one that I know very, very, very well. And I'll probably go and watch it after we're done, actually. So, my favourite TV show is Supernatural, and Supernatural tends to do a lot of their episodes based on actual, like, supernatural lore, or actual things that have happened in history. And on Season 1, Episode 15, this was in 2006, there is an episode titled The Benders, and as soon as I saw Supernatural, I knew the episode instantly. So, this episode... So, if anyone's never watched Supernatural, Sam and Dean travel across the country and they get rid of supernatural creatures. And they think, because there's a bunch of disappearances happening, and no one knows where these people are going, they might be supernatural related, because it's all screaming that way for them. And that ends up not being the case. It ends up being this family of thrill killers named Pa, Missy, Lee, and Jared Bender. And they literally just kidnap people and kill them. There's literally nothing else about it. There's just what they do. That's what the episode is. Great episode. We'll say that. Very fucking creepy. But the Bloody Benders, I think it's the name. But another one as well, for anyone who's played Red Dead Redemption 2, the Aberdeen Pig Farm Strangler mission in the video game is loosely inspired by the Bender family.
So you say Aberdeen, I was like, what about Red Dead Redemption set in America? So it'll be
so the Aberdeen Pig Farm Strangler mission in the video game Red Dead Redemption 2 is loosely inspired by the Bender family. So, yeah, there's a lot of TV episodes based on them. There's a film called Bender that came out in 2016, and there's a lot of books about the family as well, because if you watch that Supernatural episode, they pretty much got it right. It's very fucking weird. But, yeah. That is the episode on the Bloody Benders. Bit of a short one, but like I said, there's not a lot of information on them because it's such an old case, and they are from Europe originally and then going over, and then that's where they create the crimes, and then they fuck off and leave. So we don't actually know a lot of information on them. But yeah, that whole thing for me is the fact that they have a trapdoor. Like the fact that it's a trapdoor, that what their killing method involves a trapdoor, just seems very OG horror to me.
Yeah.
Like shit horror. Not like good horror, but shit horror, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel you there.
Scooby-Doo-esque. Very Scooby-Doo-esque. See, the thing is, at the time when they were doing that, they're probably thinking that they were so evil, and this was like, I don't know what they were thinking. I think, well, based on what Kate Bender had said previously, is that murder was okay, and it's a redeeming thing. So they probably thought they were doing the right thing, and that everything they were doing is completely fine. Well over 100 years later, it's no. Like, yeah, over about almost 150 years later. No, yeah, about 150 years. We're saying that your murder spree sounds like it's come straight out of an episode of Scooby-Doo. Sorry, guys, you didn't live up to a hype. You got compared to Scooby-Doo. But yeah, that was this week's episode, and I'm trying to think of what lesson is there to learn from this. Don't turn your family into a bunch of serial killers. You know what? That's the lesson for this week. Don't be turning your family into a bunch of serial killers. Murder is not okay. And based on the rumours of John and Kate Bender, do not marry your brother and sister. Don't be doing that either, because
some of that, what you just said, is common knowledge.
Common knowledge.
Oh, God.
Common knowledge, but I feel like with the cases we talk about, common knowledge has to be taught as a lesson at this point in time. But yeah, don't be turning your family into serial killers, and don't be marrying your brother or sister. We'll see you next week with another episode. Hope you enjoyed this one, and goodbye.
Bye.